Aquatics here. Today I'm going to talk to you about how I've bred Pseudomugil Cyanodoralis. This is a dwarf rainbow, or commonly called a neon blue eye. So I got this fish from Imperial Tropicals about 2 years ago when I visited the facility, and they had them there, and I was really interested. I saw them before. I've seen them before at on another YouTuber who actually keeps saltwater tanks, and I also keep saltwater tanks. So I was really interested in this fish, and I spoke to the person who was breeding them and had a really good conversation. So these fish are brackish water fish. So they're typically brackish water fish. Now you keep them in full salt water, and you can also keep them in fresh water, but they're going to thrive the most in a brackish water. So just knowing that off the get-go. They are a fish that lives in northern Australia. It says possibly New Guinea. They inhabit mangrove swamps and saline creeks. So they're a fish that kind of goes up and probably up and down the creek. So the salinity can vary. And so I keep the adults in brackish water around a salinity of around 1.010 or 1.05. So it because it's brackish, they're used to that. There's not like an ideal salinity per se. I think stability would be important, but they're forgiving in that way. One thing I have noticed about these fish is they're not long-lived. So you're going to get, when you get these fish, you're going to get maybe 1.5 to 2 years on these fish. I haven't really seen or haven't even read about, and we'll see, I'm going to continue to keep them. I haven't seen or heard of anyone, and I haven't, where they're like 3, 4, 5 years. These are a short-lived fish. So you're going to get maybe 1.5, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years out of these fish, and then they're going to kind of start to die off. Now, that being said, they are a fish that is, I would say, relatively easy to breed. As far as pseudomugils go, they're probably one of the more difficult pseudomugils to breed. So that's really why you don't see them a lot, or you don't see them a lot in the hobby. You're probably not going to see them at your local fish store because they're more specialized in that way. So you're going to either have to purchase them, online, or find someone in your local area who is breeding them, or maybe you want to start breeding them and then provide them to your local area. So I think that would be something, an advantage of breeding this fish, is that this is a fish that is interesting and people will like, but it's not going to be regularly available. So there is going to be some bit of a learning curve with this fish. Now, when I'm breeding this fish, what I do is I keep the adults and I try to keep them in a group. I started off with a group of, I think, 2 males and 3 females, and I kind of dwindled down to where I had, I think when I purchased them the first time, I purchased 6 fish. And then, lost one, so I had 5 fish, and they kind of dwindled down. But I was able to get enough eggs to have another batch of these pseudomugils, okay? And been breeding those. So this is, and then I have fry of those. So this is now, the first generation is gone, and the second generation is breeding, and now I have my third generation. So this will be my third generation, my second generation breeding of the Pseudomugils Cyanodoralis. And so I keep them in, like I said, brackish water, mixture of males and females. What I've tried to keep is two males for every 3 or 4 females, a little bit, And if you can get, keep that ratio of like 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, I think that's a good ratio. You want more males or less males than females. You're going to be using spawning mops just like you would use with any rainbow fish. I use a floating mop. You're with your yarn and then your cork on the top. So I use that. And then if I'm wanting to collect eggs, I generally collect eggs about every 3 days because they will eat their eggs. So they're not like, you can't just leave the mop in there for a week and then come back. You will get a few eggs, but if you're really wanting to breed a batch of them, you're going to want to put the mop in. You're going to leave it in there for about 2 or 3 days and then check it. And keep checking it every 3 days. Now, once I pull the mop, then I will check the eggs, check it. And if there's typically a good batch, I will get around 20 eggs. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, but somewhere around 20 eggs is what I'll get. So once I get those eggs, I don't put them into brackish water. At first I did that. At first I put them into brackish water, and what I found was they didn't hatch. They were fertilized. I could see the eyes, but they didn't hatch. So what I do now is that I put them in the fresh water. So I will take my fresh water that I use for my other tanks behind me, and I will use that water. And that water is about, I just measured like TDS, so it's slightly acidic water. It's around 175, 150 TDS. That's the measurement I use. So it's not, pure RO water, but it's not hard water either. So if you're familiar with breeding killifish, it's the kind of the same thing, giving them that lower, some people will use rainwater, but giving them that more acidic water will help them hatch. And I've done it a few different ways. I put them into the breeding container, or I've actually put them into just like a container and let them hatch out with a little bit of methylene blue. So I've done it both ways. Add a little aeration to the container if I'm using the methylene blue. And what I have found is that they will hatch pretty quickly. I've read that it takes 10 to 12 days, and I've done that. Like I've let them in there, like pulled out the ones as they were hatching and left them to 10 to 12 days. But what I found is, generally speaking, what is going to hatch out generally hatches out in the first 2 or 3 days, especially when you put them in that fresh water. After about 10, 12 days, like you're ready to toss it. There's no reason to keep it. So once I get them, once they hatch, then I will put them into a breeding container. And so I like to use, if you're not familiar with him, Lowell's Fish Lab. He has a breeding container very similarly designed to Dean's breeding apparatus. And you don't need to use either one of those. I just like those, and I like Lowell's because it's neat and clean, and it's not a lot of DIY, not a lot of DIY, and it can be 3D printed. And since I have a 3D printer, I print them out. First few I bought from him, but if you don't know who he is, check out Lowell's Fish Lab, LOWELL, and then Fish Lab, and he's a lot of really great videos. He explains through, and then he can lead you to his. You can join his Patreon page and download his files for free, and then print them out. Or you can actually, if you don't have a 3D printer, you can just buy them from his Etsy page. So really love his items. So the little shout out to Lowell's Fish Lab. Love your stuff. So then I put them in the Lowell's Fish Lab container, and then I start feeding them. I generally feed them fry powder and a mixture of fry powder and brine shrimp. and leave them in there for about a month. I feed them, try to feed them 3 times a day, at least 2 times a day, and try to do 1 batch of brine shrimp a day. If I can do 2 batches of the live brine shrimp, that's awesome. But I try to, that's my goal, is get at least 2, 3 times a day. Using either fry powder, I use Sarah Micron, and I've also used Aquarium Co-op. So I use both the Magic Fish Feed and the Sarah Micron, and then the brine shrimp. And so then I leave them in there for about a month and let them grow. Let them grow out, get a little bit bigger, let them grow out in the tray for about a month. And then after a month, then I transfer them, they're still in fresh water, transfer them to a 10-gallon. Same thing, just keep feeding them, feed them, feed them. Feed them as often as you can, 2 times a day minimum, 3 times a day is better. The more you feed them, and doing the water changes. So the more you're doing water changes, the better off it's going to be, right? Frequent water changes. You know, I try at least once a week, but ideally, if you can change your water twice a week, 3 times a week, the more often you can change water, the better. Now, that can be difficult because you got these little fry swimming around and not sucking them up unless you're in or going over the overflow. The nice thing about these fish is they do tend to stay on the top. They're not like they don't go down on the bottom. So if you're siphoning and you're cleaning the bottom, they're going to stay on the top. So that's a plus for these fish. They do like to stay on the very top of the tank, right at the surface. So after they've been in the 10-gallon, after they've been swimming around there, eating for about, now they're 3 months old, so about another 2 months. So leave them in there for about another 2 months. Then that's when I start to transition them over to the brackish water. I start adding, when I'm doing my water changes, I'm adding salt water in, and taking out the fresh water, adding salt water in until I get them to that brackish water phase, or that 1.05 or 1.010 level, and then now they're ready. They're in their environment that they'll stay in through adulthood. And once they get to adulthood, if you want to then convert them to full salt water, you can. If you want to keep them in fresh water, just don't convert them from fried to brackish water. But I think the life, from my understanding, the life expectancy will be less. And if you're talking about a fish you're going to get about 2 years with, you may only get 1.5 years with them or something like that. So they're definitely a fish that you kind of have to stay on top of. I have not tried to community breed these fish. I have not tried to I've never been in a situation where I've left the mops in and things have hatched and fry have grown out from just hatching from the mops. They will predate on the eggs and most likely the fry. So I haven't been seen any of that. Sometimes when I breed fish, I will miss something, or I will find out like, oh look, there's a couple in there. So that's happened with a lot of other fish. It has not happened with this fish, but I think it's a great fish. It's striking. The blue and the yellow, and the way, especially the breeding behavior of the males, when the males are kind of circling around one another, it's really cool, and their fins are up. Really cool fish to have. Temperature, I found that they really started picking up breeding when the temperature was warmer. So right now the tanks are running. I have the fish room, it's in my garage. I don't heat the garage or cool the garage. It's kind of the temperature of the garage, and right now my garage is warm. Temperature of my garage right now is 81 degrees. Temperature of the tanks are in the 80s too, so like 80, 81, 82. That's when I found the breeding really pick up. In the winter time, when the tanks were cooler, in the 75, 72, no breeding. And that's fairly typical. If you're wanting to breed fish, you're going to have to bump up that temperature research says 77 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or 25 to 27 degrees Celsius, and I would say that's be on the higher end. 80 to 27 degrees Celsius would probably be your ideal temperature range when you're wanting them to breed. Bumping up that temperature, that's when I've found to have more success, more eggs. So that's how I breed Pseudomugil Cyanodoralis, the neon blue eye. Sure, there's many ways to breed it, but that's the way that I found successful. There is some information on the internet. There really aren't any YouTube videos that I found that give information on how to breed this fish. I would like to get to the point where I have a good colony enough to kind of share with, but I haven't gotten to that point yet. I've had enough to kind of continue it going on, but not enough to where like I'm breeding like 50, 100, fish. Now, so that's my experience with breeding Pseudomugil Cyanodoralis, the neon blue eyes. Hope you found this video interesting. There's not a lot of information out there on how to breed this fish. I had to do a lot of research, and then also talking to the people at Imperial Tropicals that were breeding them gave me like the tips on how to go about it. So if you like this video, please give me a like. If you have any more questions about this fish, leave me comments, and if you'd like to see more videos about how I'm breeding different fish, let me know that too. God bless.